Hello, welcome to Steve McDonald's Crafting, and today what I'm doing is a piece of mixed media painting using this old canvas board that I'd had lying around that I was going to do a previous picture and this plaster strips bandage. It works really well. I drew some umbrellas on here using a Sharpie, and now I'm just soaking bits of bandage in there, squeezing a lot of the water out because I don't want it to be overwatered, and then using just a wet finger to ensure that I get rid of any bumps and lumps, and it saves a lot of sanding later on, smoothing that down. And it really is easy to apply, and it sticks on here so well. Now I'm filling in the middle bit, and again I'll use the same technique, cleaning it up with a tissue, paper cloth, to avoid a lot of water on there, and it really does help to get the picture to dry off a lot quicker. And now once it's dry, I left it for about 3 days, I'm just going over it with my rotary tool and sanding it down with a sander on, a lot quicker than doing it by hand. I'm using my vacuum cleaner to suck up all the dust while it's doing it as well, because you know how messy I am. I didn't want to make any more mess. So polishing that all off, getting it nice and clean, going over it again with the vacuum cleaner to ensure that it's nice and clear of as much dust as possible. And then what I'll do is I'm painting it with a primer, just a normal white primer, and this is the primer that I'm using, and that seals it in all lovely, and it stopped anything absorbing straight into it and ruining the picture. Now once that's dry, what I've got here is some latex paint, and the reason I'm using latex paint is because I want it to resist the alcohol inks that I'm going to be using to paint this up with. So I'm making sure that I go over this really carefully and getting it into everywhere. I give it 2 coats of this latex paint, and I will link everything in the description below, so don't worry about that. So now that's dry, it's the next day, and what I'm going to do is use my alcohol inks by Pinata to paint this picture. Now the first umbrella I'm working on, I actually want to use the alcohol inks as an underpainting. So I'll let this dry before I finish it off. I've put some 99% alcohol in there first and brush that on as you saw. And then I tried to use my airbrush to get this to coat, but actually I don't think that's very successful. So I use a brush after that, and it gives a much nicer, clearer finish. Pop in a little bit more alcohol in to move that around and liven it up again, and then finish that off, covering the whole of the canopy of the umbrella in this colour. So now I'm happy with that. What I'm going to do is drop some different colours while that is drying onto this closed umbrella, and this is just the alcohol black. Used a bit of alcohol. I don't want it to be a real solid black. I want it to have what looks like a little bit of texture, and that is why I put some alcohol into it, and I'm going over it as well to help give a little bit of shadowing. I just want to say a quick thank you to everybody who bought me a coffee last month, and your names are coming up on my coffee board, and if you'd like to buy me a coffee just to say thank you and help support me and keep this channel going, the link for that is in the description below. So I'm using quite a vibrant yellow here because I love yellow. It really does show up for me. And again, painting this all over, it only took 1 cover of this, and it coated really well. Using my brush, much more successful than that messy airbrush. There is a place for an airbrush with alcohol inks, but this just wasn't it. And now what I'm doing is just filling a little shot glass with some 99% alcohol, and it must be 99% alcohol because that has no water in it, and it really does react very well with what I'm doing here. I've got a Q-tip, and I'm just going through making dots on this, and what that'll do is that'll push those alcohol inks out of the way, and it kind of creates these little circles, and until that has dried and evaporated, these will continue to expand and kind of make the pattern that I'm looking for. So this smaller umbrella, I'm just using a pink colour and going over that, and then once that's sorted out, I will use the same technique on that as well, but I do let it dry, because sometimes if you let the alcohol inks dry a little bit and then go in it with a bit of 99% alcohol, you do get quite a nice firm pattern to it, as you can see on that yellow one, which is really now finished doing what it was going to do. Now this is completely dry, and it does need to be completely dry if you're using alcohol inks as an undercoat, and it doesn't work so well on a Yupo paper. It does work much better when you've got this latex paint on it. I'm now going over with the final colour and covering it all up again, and you'll see why in a second. So now it's all covered up, and while that's still a little bit wet, that top coat, I'm using the 99% alcohol on a Q-tip, daubing it all on, because I do like to daub things on, and allowing them undercolours to come through and reactivate, and also allowing that top colour to go from the solid colour to more of a opaque colour. And again, the same with the pink one. I'm using tiny dots on this one, but pushing it quite firm to get a good dot coverage, as you'll see in a second. So now I'm going over this one with the chili pepper red and covering that right up. But I wasn't very careful, as you can see here, and did make a bit of a mess. But don't worry about that. It's easy to clean this up. All you need to do is, once you've made that mess, let it dry up and then just cut in some white primer again and a little bit of the latex paint, and it will be as if it never was there. And I do quite a bit of tidy up on this background before I finish off everything. And that's the great thing about art and crafting. If it don't work at first, change it. So now I am using an acrylic paint because I want quite a solid colour for these handles and the cords. And what I'll do is I'll go around with this black acrylic paint all the way on to all of the handles to finish those off. And then I use a little bit of silver paint to put some highlights on where the little silver bits would be. So this is the silver paint that I'm using. I'm painting some of the stems with silver paint. Some of the stems I do paint black, and I quite like those, and also the little caps as well. And I just think that finishes it off nicely. And now it's to the background, and what I'm doing here is I'm putting an acrylic wash on. It's a very weak acrylic paint that I've made using just water and some black. And what I'll do is I'll pop this all over the actual surface, and then I will use a tissue or a cloth, it doesn't need to be a tissue, and remove quite a lot by dabbling it over and giving it a texture. So it's got kind of, I don't know, it's not a grain, and this is what it looked like when it was finished. And then I thought I'd do the same using gold, but I didn't have enough gold acrylic paint, so I mixed up some gold and some brass and some copper, and it made quite a lot. And I went over again, doing exactly the same method and technique and putting it on and then using a cloth to take it off. But I didn't like it. I just thought it looked a little bit bleh. And this is again the great thing, you can change things up as you go. If you don't like it, don't throw it, just change it. So even though I've cut in all the areas that I wanted to cut in with this, I still kept playing around with it and then thought, nah, I don't like it. So I'm going over it with more of the solid base and getting rid of all that. I give it 2 coats of this, and it actually does come through quite nice and solid, and I'm pleased I did, as I really didn't like that first technique. And also, this colour does make the actual umbrellas, I think, pop a little bit more as well, and not look like they're sitting in a muddy puddle, which is what they look like. Just finishing this off, again, with my 2-inch brush, and cutting that in around all these bits, and was quite easy to cut in. So that's all finished now, and the sun's come out lovely. And what I'm using on top of this now is a little bit of gold wax, and I do love this. And this pot I've had for years, it lasts forever. I'm using cloth to pot that on with, and I'm not covering the whole thing in that. All I'm doing is covering a little bit in certain areas. Don't forget to boot that like button. It really does help my videos to get out there, and I appreciate it so much. So once that's done, I'll polish that up, and I've hung it on the wall in my hall. And I love how this comes out. It's been there about 3 years, hasn't faded. Take care, enjoy your crafting. Bye.